Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Rachel Patton, Executive Director of Preserve Arkansas. Preserve Arkansas is the statewide nonprofit advocate for the preservation of Arkansas's historic places. Thank you for joining us for our Women in Preservation webinar this afternoon. This series features Arkansas women who are working to save the state's historic places. The project is generously supported by DMX Architecture in Fayetteville. So a big thank you to DMX for their support. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. A native of the state of Arkansas, Claudia Shannon has dedicated her life to the recognition of the interior design profession and to her allied colleagues in the building arts, pursuing the betterment of design in Arkansas. Her recognition by each of these professions has continued to place her at esteemed tables of collaboration and education, serving on advisory boards, think tanks, and boards of directors. Engaging herself in many levels of service for the American Society of Interior Designers, Council for Interior Design Qualification, and the State Board of Interior Design, she has maintained her Jonesboro, Arkansas professional office, Shannon Design Enterprises, with her partner and husband, Howard Shannon, since 1974. Historic preservation has brought Shannon much acclaim since the 1990s, serving as the restoration director on 3 museum projects for Arkansas State University and as interior designer for 2 important rooms in the Arkansas State Capitol. Many awards through ASID, AIA, and historic preservation organizations were given for these projects. Claudia Shannon added to recognition of the interior design profession by leading the effort to register interior designers in Arkansas, by pursuing the movement of the University of Arkansas Interior Design Department to the Fay Jones School of Architecture, and by authoring the Delta section of Buildings of Arkansas, one of a series, Buildings of the United States, books on the most significant American architecture. Please welcome Claudia Shannon. Claudia, if you can turn your camera on, there you go.
And unmute.
You're set. And then you can.
Other screen sharing. Hello. Can you hear me, Rachel?
Yes, looks great.
We may want to explain. This is my first Zoom ever.
It looks really good.
I'm a little behind the times. Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone coming to talk to us today and hear what I'm going to talk about. Let me see something. Here we go. I'm often asked how I got into historic preservation. And did my interior design education prepare me for this work? That is something that I have thought about a lot and decided to talk to you about that today, because the state of Arkansas graduates somewhere between 50 and 80 interior design students every year. We have 3 programs in interior design now, which we had none when I went into college in 1968. And I want to make you more aware that these students are out there and that they have a good background to join your historic preservation projects. So that's how I chose to approach this today. When I was a child and when I married, all of my vacations were to historic places. In fact, my honeymoon was the river road going up and down the Mississippi. But one of the most important things that I remember making a difference in me wanting to help preserve history in Arkansas was my 5th grade trip to Little Rock. It was to what is now called Historic Arkansas Museum, to the state capitol, and to the old State House. And I will never forget it. And it made a huge, difference in my life. As a family, we went to Williamsburg. As a married person, I went all the way up and down the River Road more than once. And one of the things that is most memorable in our household is we bought a piece of furniture out of the San Francisco plantation on our honeymoon, because it was already sold to the Gulf Oil Company, and the lady that lived there was planning to move. And so that kind of thing has always been important in our family. I grew up in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and went to this high school that you see with the kids going up the sidewalk. But the same month that I'm married, May of 1973, a tornado tore it down. And I have spent since 1974 back in Jonesboro, and know that to this day, that building that is gone is revered by everyone who ever went to school there. So it gives me a real knowledge as to what buildings can mean to people, more than just their memories of what went on in them. It's the actual structure that means so much. An interior design education includes a lot of history: architecture, interior design, furniture, art, textiles, material culture. I can't even add up how many hours of just plain history I had. And then the other things that are included that help with historic preservation are building materials, building technology and systems, codes and standards, specifications, documentation and presentation, and professional practice. All of these things are a good basis for learning how to handle historic preservation. But what gave me extra training was on-the-job training working for Main Street, Arkansas in 1993 and 94 as their interior designer for their model business grant. That was my first real on-the-job work with historic preservation and learning more about the standards. I had a wonderful few mentors. Ruth Hawkins and I had worked together at Arkansas State University on some buildings, some new buildings, not old buildings. And then during this process, I got to be really close to Charles and Becky Witzel. So between the three of them, I had some great mentors that helped me learn more about historic preservation. And then continuing education that anybody can take and makes a difference, because I'm sure many people out there have done self-study to get them where they are today. And I attended restoration and renovation annual conferences and learned a lot there. The National Trust Leadership Training, the Rural Heritage Development Initiative, and one of the smartest men I've ever heard in my life, Donovan Ripkema. I've heard every time I've had a chance, I've listened to him. He has been a great knowledge base for me. And then, of course, self-study. And then if any of you have ever taught, you can identify that we learn as much when we teach as we are teaching. And I taught historic preservation at Arkansas State University in their history department once or twice. So those things. Oh, I have a cat that's come up. Let's see. Now, the cat made me lose my place, y'all. Let's get it. Okay, there. This is just a poster that Main Street, Arkansas did that kind of shows the kind of buildings that we worked on in 93 and 94. And as I said, I was just an interior designer on these projects. I wasn't, but I learned from the other people I was working from more historic preservation knowledge. But being in Jonesboro, I was called on to do some historic work before I ever thought of myself as a preservationist. This is my church, and I was always asked to work on it. And I knew it was important to maintain its integrity as a historic building. Then those happened, and my first real historic project was the Hemingway Phifer Museum and Education Center in Pigott. And Ruth asked me to be part of this, and it was a 3-year project with all grant money. And the most interesting part about it for me was finding all the original furniture. We made the decision that we weren't going to put anything in it that had not come from that structure. So there's very little, like maybe this typewriter. We found that as something that was true to the period, but it was like the one that we have testified Hemingway used. But everything else, like the cabinet on the wall, those are pieces that eventually we got back from the James family, who, when they bought the structures, bought them completely intact. And then when they moved away, they took the furniture with them. But Howard and I went to North Carolina and met with the James family, and they decided to loan the furniture back to the Hemingway Phifer home. And this is the barn studio, if you have not seen that on the right. The house itself on the outside took very little of my design knowledge, because all we did was figure out where the original colors were and what they were. And Becky Witzel did her wonderful knowledge on that. So we painted it back like it was originally. And that's true on the inside as well. You see the parlor is a dark brown, and that's what it was in 1920 or so through the 30s, when the Phifers lived there and Hemingway was there as a family member. Other things that during that time frame I was asked to be involved with in Jonesboro were other churches in our community. And this was the First Baptist Church. However, you'll see this capitol on it's the left of my screen. And one of the girls, or two of the girls that had learned how to do the gold leafing on the radiators in in Hemingway Phifer, came here and did them on this capitol. We finished the Hemingway Phifer in 99. And in 2000, Witzel, Evans, and Rasco asked me to be their interior design member for their restoration of this room in the state capitol, which is called the Governor's Reception Hall, and then another room that I'll show you in a moment. This, here again, I learned so much from Becky and Charles Witzel during this. As the interior designer, I didn't do as many things as you see here, because Becky Witzel did all the colors and the stenciling and all of that. What I did was I made a real thorough scan of the whole building and found a few pieces of furniture in the basement that appeared to be as old as the Capitol. And I ended up having several of those things reproduced. But we also bought these historic office chairs to go around the table that had been made just for this room, and had a historic carpet person make this rug to be appropriate for the room, and had the drapery made. So those are more interior design kind of items. But while doing this as their interior designer, I learned so much about the way that you document the true age of a structure. And this is the other room. It was the old state capitol. It's the old Supreme Court room. It's my understanding that it has been painted white recently. So this was done in 2000, and we're now in 2021. So generally a space should last more than 20 years, but evidently there were some things about this that did not last 20 years. But the most interesting part about this space to me was having the 27-inch carpet brought in, and the specialists who know how to sew it all together and install it. That was quite a big part of the job in this room. And the big U-shaped table was custom made out of from a studio in the Ozarks, a true studio that was developed during the hippie years. Somebody came from the East Coast, didn't want to be involved in the big cities anymore, and set up their studio in the Ozarks. And they made several of the chairs. As you'll see, they're the same chairs throughout the room, and they made the table. So I thought that was really a very learning experience. This is another home that I did during this time in Jonesboro. And I like to use this house when I'm showing a group what the real standards mean. And I've written some of number 9 and most of number 10 down below, because this on the left is what the house originally looks like. But if you look on the right, you see coming up from the side, you can see the new section has the stone, and then it has the setback of the white brick. And doing that, I felt like it truly fulfills those two standards. And I ask people often to drive up beside it and see how you could take away the new part and the white connection, and you would still have the original structure without damaging that structure. Of course, Lakeport is probably the biggest job I ever worked on. It was presented to me, Ruth Hawkins said to me one day around 99. She said, we have received a call today about Lakeport Plantation. She said, I don't know much about it, but they called it their baby, but said that they were unable to get the owner to work with them. And we had done such a good job with the Hemingway Phifer that they wondered if we wanted to go and see about this project. I said, be still my heart immediately. And the very next day, my husband and I drove down there and met a good friend of mine, Mary Beth Frazier, who lives in Warren. And she happened to know the family, the Ford family, that had lived here as a tenant farmer well, not really as a tenant farmer. He was more of the manager for the owner of the plantation. His family was back in the 70s. And she remembered that, and we went to see him, and he told us really what all we needed to know, and who we needed to see, which was Sam Angel. And we went to his gym that very day and talked to him. At this point, there was no project for ASU. It was just a possibility of a project at some point. And I had learned about other people who had done some research on Lakeport Plantation over the years, and put those names together and called those people and asked them if they would be interested in working on a team to hopefully someday restore Lakeport Plantation. And one of the people I called was Charles Witzel. And at the moment, he was very involved in some big projects, and initially said that he had no time. But he said, "But what projects are you talking about?" And I said, "Lakeport Plantation." And he said, "May I back up?" And with that, Charles and Becky were part of this team and made important contributions all the way through. We worked from 99 to 2001, putting together ideas and research, and in this team of about 10 people. And our first family reunion with the Johnson family was 2001. And this is what you'll see down at the bottom. This picture says 01. This is what it looked like in 01. We had not done any work. We had just done research. And then we had this family reunion with the Johnsons. And our team continued to meet every 2 or 3 months down here. And by 2002, we started having grant money coming in. And one day, Sam Angel loved to eat meals with all of us. And one day we were sitting at lunch with him. Everybody had told me Sam Angel would never give anything away. But he was very interested in how much this was going to cost and where we were going to get the money. And I said, "Sam, I have decided that it'll take at least 5 years and $5 million to restore the plantation house." And I said, "We will never get any public money with it being in your private hands. You will have to give it away." And he went, "Okay." And that was the beginning of it. We finished that main part of the structural changes by 2007, and we spent $6 million. So it virtually did take 5 to 6 years. We did not finish the exhibitry until 2012. So that what turned out to be the longest project of my life. This is what it looked like finished. Now, I will say they have completed that's the dairy that you see sticking out on the right in the back, and the dairy has been restored since this photograph. This is, on the left, is a photograph showing how the heat and air conditioning and ventilation was brought into the house. It was the most important thing that we did, I think, was to make sure that today's modernization does not show whatsoever. And the heat and air is certainly part of that. They brought it underground, and because the water table is just 6 feet down, they had to put it in these things that are meant to go under the ocean, these big, not tanks, but oh heck, can't think what I should call them. Anyway, they go underground, and one is the supply and one is the return. There is no evidence when you're in the house that there is a supply and return. The supply comes through the 13 fireplaces, comes down through the chimneys, and comes out where you would normally have a, just where the air would go up inside of it. And you don't see it whatsoever. You can see a fireplace here on the right, and just think about the fact that air is coming out of that, but you do not see it. And this on the right it shows the finishes after we have completed all the plaster, all the painting, all the cleaning, and it just gives you a kind of an idea of what it looked like finished. But this is what it looked like before. On the left is what the original kitchen looked like. And many of the rooms look this rough. This one particularly, because it hadn't been used in probably, 50 or 60 years, and it had gotten pretty run down. On the right is how it looked when we opened up on 2007. I had to find a few things that looked of the period to give the kitchen more of a kitchen in use. We did not have any of the other rooms in the main part of the house with items in it, but we did the commissary and the kitchen. We did show those with some not current, but period pieces. Later, I've worked on some other projects in the state. This one is the most recent. I did this as the interior design member with Tommy Jameson, who also had a great deal of influence from Charles Witzel in his earlier career. And this one, I was truly acting as an interior designer because it had burned a few years before. The roof had burned off and they had to bring it back to a certain level. So all the trim, all the plaster had been fixed. Everything was clean and ready to be decorated, as you would say. We had evidence of what the family was like when they pulled off things. There was a wallpaper that looked very much like this wallpaper in its shape and color, in its design. And I had to really study. I love to research. I had to really study to find things that were appropriate for the era. And the same thing is true of the carpet. Now, this again is the 27-inch goods that have been sewn together. And it is a document piece from the era of 1858-59. The wallpaper is also a document piece. The furniture pieces you see and the piano belong to the Horner family or the Moore family. I'm not quite sure if every piece is exactly as it was. I think the pier mirror was still here. And then we had the drapery made in Little Rock. And they are also to period standards. And so my favorite part of any job is researching what is correct for the era. And that is truly an interior designer's work. In this house, we knew that it had had a floor cloth, just like Lakeport had had a floor cloth. Lakeport had the largest found floor cloth ever to be found. It's still in the structure in the state of Arkansas. The actual floor cloth was missing in this structure. There was not even a piece of it. So I had to come up with what was appropriate. Well, the hardest part about this whole job was getting a geometric pattern to fit in a historic, always changed space. And so we ended up getting 3 different rugs. You'll see a gray line there. We did 3 different floor cloths to be able to fit it together. Then the most unique thing that I've been involved with, not at all an interior designer kind of project, was in 2004, Cy Sutherland asked me to write the Delta section of the Buildings of Arkansas book. At that point, I had spent several years on the School of Architecture board and knew Cy somewhat, although I'm not sure he remembered me. I think he ended up getting other people to recommend me because they turned him down. So then they kept having to come up with somebody to say, well, this person can do it. I think I was the last choice. But this is the Society of Architectural Historians is sponsoring a book for every state, but they, of course, have not made it near even half of the states. Our state was under contract for years. Cy started it, and then Cy was sick. Then it was moved around to different editors. I did most of my travel in 2007 and 2008 during the recession, where I didn't have as much interior design work. So it was great for me to spend that time traveling around the state. And I didn't say a while ago, one of the things I did take the Main Street, Arkansas job for was so that I could learn more about our state, because it was a matter of traveling all around the state. So I've really enjoyed that part of historic preservation, is getting to see and learn more about every little nook and cranny in Arkansas. This is the explanation in the cover of the book. And it says that the book is considered Cy Sutherland's book, although Gregory Herman and I can't read everything, but Jeannie Wayne, they both did a lot of work from the University of Arkansas. Then Gene Sizemore had a certain section, more the Ozarks, I believe, and I had the Delta section. And so it took a lot of people to get this through. The most disappointing thing is the books that I had bought that were in this series had been in the, $40 range. The Arkansas book is $85. So I can tell you it didn't sell very well. And I'm pretty sure it's because of the price, because the photographs aren't big and colorful. They're small because there's a lot more text than there are photographs. And it's not a coffee table book. It's a real research book. And if you want to know what is considered the most significant architecture in Arkansas, this is a book that you will enjoy. Rachel, I think I've come to the end of my PowerPoint.
Okay. Will you stop sharing your screen, please? And then
I will see if I can. Let's see, stop share. Okay.
There you go.
There, is that it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Wonderful. What a fascinating presentation. I did not realize you had worked on all those projects, so that was really fun to watch. Let me invite anyone who's watching the webinar to type a question or a comment for Claudia. You can put it into the chat or to the Q&A, and I will ask her whatever questions you have. and she'll respond live. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. In the meantime, I will ask you a couple of questions of my own. Oh, and just a couple things from watching your presentation. I went to a Johnson family reunion. I think it must have been the 10th one.
Well, we had them every 2 years. We had,
Okay.
and we did have a few of them in Kentucky. I think we've had 2 of them in Kentucky where the family was from. And then the rest were at Lakeport. Now they're further apart now. Now you came, do you remember when? It was after you had started this job, or?
It was whenever I was at HPP, and they invited me to come to the reunion and then to lead a walking tour of downtown Lake Village.
Okay.
For anybody who wanted to go.
Okay.
And I remember it was fun, but it rained. So we did the walking tour in the rain.
Okay.
It was a good time. And I just looked at a National Register nomination today for the Eddie Mae Heron Center in Pocahontas and noticed that you wrote it. So you're forgetting to tell people that you also authored National Register nominations.
Yes, I did the renovation for the Eddie Mae Heron.
Okay.
And also the Catholic Church there. I didn't have any photographs to put in my presentation. So I haven't put every little thing that I've worked on, but I did enjoy working on the Eddie Mae Heron. They had a great story to tell.
They do. Okay. Oh, I think this is from Missy. Hi, Claudia. I sure enjoyed getting to know you as you worked on these wonderful projects.
I love Missy.
And Ruth O'Laughlin at Lakeport. The 10th reunion was in 2017. We have them every 5 years. Okay, well, that wasn't it. It was farther back than that. But
yeah, we used to have them every 2. But and we have made wonderful friends in the Johnson family. That makes it a really wonderful thing to be involved with.
Yes, I remember it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So if anyone else wants to type questions, please go ahead and I'll continue asking. Claudia, what are some of the biggest changes that have happened in interior design since you started your career?
Well, let's see. Initially, because I've been doing this a long time, but initially, nobody in Arkansas even knew what interior designers did. They knew what decorators did, but they didn't know the difference. So I spent the first 20 years trying to at least get people to know what we did. And now the real change is now everybody is a designer because of TV. Because of all the TV shows that have included do-it-yourself kind of interior design, or all the tear it down, build it back in 1 week kind of thing. So there's a real difference in what people know about the field. And the thing that has made what has changed for the professionals is now we have finally become more accepted by the allied professionals, the architects, the engineers, other professionals. They are finally accepting the interior designers. So our work, thank goodness, is more often professional and involved with the architects, engineers, that sort of work. And the individuals are doing a lot more of their own work.
That's interesting. And and there was another interior designer who spoke last month for our Women in Preservation talk, who works for an architectural firm in Little Rock. And it's, most of the bigger firms have interior designers on staff now.
And well, in Little Rock, they do. Little Rock is very ahead of some of the other places. And I think that the interior designers have a lot to take credit for, because when we passed that law to register interior designers, they became more aware of us, and they have accepted us more in Little Rock than they have in other, not every state has had the acceptance that Arkansas has had.
That's interesting. Okay, let's see. There's a question for you from Mary Jane Silva, who is my mother.
Oh, really?
What is the most significant event, or who is the most significant person who influenced your career?
Well, I've had all these different parts of my career, but I would say that Charles Witzel is the most significant, he and Becky, of my historic part of my career. They have taught me a lot. They've been very accepting, and it has been a great relationship.
Absolutely. I think those two have influenced a lot of people.
They sure have. They
have. Okay. And then I'll ask another one. Do you have a favorite project?
Well, I have to say that because of the length of time and how many people it involved, that Lakeport has to be my most loved project. It was like birthing a baby over a long gestation. But and you know, I had a wonderful team that I got to be so close to. And then from that, we also have the Johnson family that we got to be close to. And we started a group of advocates in the town. So there's this huge group of people. It's not just the project, it's all the people involved, that it makes you just really have a real special place in your heart for that. Although I've told you this, I have a hard time going back to projects that I love that much. It's when it's over, it's like you've got to build up to letting go of it. And if you go back very often, then you have to start all over that process to let go of it again.
That's interesting. I know how you feel. Does anybody else have questions? If you do, go ahead and ask them now. Okay, I don't see anything else. So thank you so much, Claudia, for your excellent presentation. And now I'm going to share just a couple more slides here at the end with y'all. There we go. There we go. So Women in Preservation, we will not have talks in December or in January. So we'll start back up in the second Tuesday in February 2022. So stay tuned for our 2022 schedule of speakers. But in the meantime, please make plans to join us for these two upcoming in-person events. We'll have a Dollars and Cents of Historic Preservation workshop at the Woodruff Electric Co-op at Forest City on Thursday, December the 2nd, and registration for that workshop will open up later this week. And then the Arkansas Preservation Awards is coming up at the Arkansas Governor's Mansion on January the 28th, 2022. We will honor 17 outstanding preservation projects from all over the state, as well as Gary Clements of North Little Rock, the 2021 recipient of the Parker Westbrook Award for Lifetime Achievement. And tickets and sponsorships for the Preservation Awards are already available on our website. And as always, I'd ask you to follow us on social media, go to our website at preservearkansas.org to learn more about what we do. And I'd encourage you, if you're not already, to support us year-round by becoming a member. Thank you all for watching. Bye.